Welcome to the Religiously Offensive Podcast.
No idea that the nearest exit ramp is like, you know, in his little turtle body, it's going to take him about 20 minutes to get to, and he's got to pick the right direction.
Yeah.
If he doesn't, he's screwed.
And he's probably sitting there thinking, I'm almost there.
Who knows? He's probably just like, this is how it ends.
I saw a video
Like,
of a turtle sleeping. It was the funniest, most peaceful thing I've ever seen. It was literally just his head was sticking up. He was at the bottom of the ocean. His head was sticking up, like, and bubbles were just coming out.
Don't they breathe air?
Yeah.
Maybe he was meditating. There's no way. Do turtles sleep?
But turtles come from the ocean, though.
Do whales sleep? Like, how do these animals breathe oxygen?
Nah, I mean,
Also
you think
sleep.
whales just chill on the surface?
They float up by the surface when they sleep.
That's so funny.
There's a lot of marine
How many
mammals.
animals you've never seen sleep, right?
Okay, we clearly didn't even
They
get to the
either
bottom of
rest
this.
quietly in the water, vertically or horizontally, or sleep while swimming slowly next to another animal.
I bet there's animals like turtles.
That's evolution.
Turtles
That's
chill in the
incredible.
ocean.
They
Like
only
sea
sleep
turtles.
for 30 minutes.
A day?
Yes. How long do
man.
whales sleep for?
Life
30
hack.
minutes.
I need to get that
They
CRISPR, some
cannot
of that
sleep for
turtle
much longer than 30
DNA.
minutes.
Dude, you kidding me?
That was whale. Turtles are longer.
Oh, okay.
This is
I need
like
to get some of that whale
This
DNA.
is like that. What was that new Jurassic World, the second movie, where they're just like, we're just gonna make a petri dish of all the best parts of all the dinosaurs, and it's probably gonna be fine.
That's every
and it
movie.
Wasn't.
That's every movie after the first one, actually.
So CRISPR now, it's like, give me a little turtle,
yeah.
give me a little
some
whale. Interesting. While we're talking, are we going?
Some spider. Can I walk on the walls?
That'd be dope. Are we going?
Yeah, we are.
This is
We
okay.
have that.
So
Do you
this
see
was
the red blinking light?
That's right.
okay.
I've
Now that I
learned.
know, I will never need to ask
Oh,
again.
she knows
I am
that.
sorry. Okay.
Right
Here's
before I drop a bomb, I look up real quick to make sure.
Nagasaki. Okay, here's a predicament. What do you do? Well, I know what most people would do. I currently have one gloriously built wasp nest outside my back door, right? So we're going to go outside, hanging patio. Once you get past the overhang, you look to your right, about 15 feet that way. I'm talking this thing's big. We're looking at least 6 inches in diameter, and they're building that honeycomb. And I mean,
incredible.
it is just colony. I think we're at
I don't think
colony status.
All right. I don't think they make honey, though, right?
So here's my predicament. Most people, just face value, are going to be like, murder all of those things.
Can you milk a wasp? I'm sorry. I was just curious.
Can you milk a wasp?
Well, not to get into the
Not milk
meet
it,
the
but honey it?
Fockers.
You can
but
milk anything with nipples. That's what I heard.
I don't know if wasps
Do wasps
have
have nipples?
nipples.
My Google. If anybody looks at my Google search history,
I've got nipples, Greg. Can you milk me?
Okay, so here's my predicament. Because I don't know how to explain it other than the fact that I knew when I saw this thing, I was like, bro, those little guys have been working so hard. Blood, sweat, tears, their entire life. And it's like, I'm just going to be the guy that comes out here and is just like, genocide.
Yeah,
And I'm
exactly.
going to just end everything for all of them. And then I start thinking, I'm just like, I think wasps also, is wasps.
Maybe they're misunderstood.
That's what I'm saying. I'm like, we have had 0 incidences to date. Like, we've never been stung by any of them.
Yeah, until you are. And then that sucks.
Okay. Well, we can cross that bridge when we get there.
No, the problem is you're going to cross the line with them and you're not going to know it. And then they're going to send a couple of their attack wasps out
And
there.
this is why I did my research. So we delved into this thing, right?
Okay.
About the different kind of wasps, aggressive tendencies, which ones you got to watch out for. So we're pretty confident based on the structure of the colony and the look of the wasps that they're paper wasps.
I wish I had the time that you have.
It's like life is great. Never have children. I don't know. Or do. I mean,
Never have
I'm sure it's
children.
fulfilling
Yeah.
on purpose.
Paper
Yeah.
wasps are nasty, right?
I don't know. I mean, they look intimidating, but this has always been my vibe. It's like, hey, look, man, I'm gonna try to be unthreatening, and like if any of you bite me one time, you all die.
You're all screwed.
It's
yeah.
like I just feel like we have an understanding. It's like zero tolerance policy. But here's the crazy thing is then I started looking into this, and like a colony of wasps can kill up to like 4,000 bugs a day. And I'm just like, dude, these are my watchers.
What kind of bugs?
Like,
do
think
they
about
kill?
how secure my backyard is, dude. Like, I'll never need to have pest control.
Have you ever seen a wasp killer?
I don't know. They had those like murder hornets like last year. Those were pretty intense.
Yeah, a wasp killer is a massive thing.
Wait, is it a wasp or is it a thing that kills?
It's a wasp killer.
So it's just a bigger version?
Well, I didn't want to start this video. I don't know what it's doing.
Because we had those murder hornets. Was it last year? They were just like decapitating bees for fun. It was just some
They're
gnarly
like-
stuff.
Like that big.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's concerning.
When Hurricane Irma broke our screen, it broke one side of the screen, and I needed parts to get it repaired, and they were all in back order because everyone needed their stuff. So I put a tarp there for a while. Sometimes the tarp would fall down, and then it would just become like, because the insects couldn't get out the other side. So it was just a giant net that all the insects were getting stuck in. So like we had
it's like
tons
a big bug trap.
of bugs in there. Yeah, snakes, bugs, everything.
Snakes, no.
So
No.
there's this. I look up, dude. I see this thing. It looks like a little bird. It's so big. Like, and I'm just. It looks like a wasp, right? And I'm just like,
A bird-sized wasp?
well, it's what I just showed you. A wasp killer. It's like apparently they're not like they don't do anything to humans, but they kill wasps. And it's like
Also, wasp feels like it should be one of those like sheep words where it's like, I have one sheep, I have 10 sheep. Like I have 10 wasp.
it's profound.
Like to add an extra
it
S,
makes a lot of
wasps.
sense. It makes a
Like
lot
that
of
is.
sense.
I need to.
Did you finish your story? I don't remember the punchline. What happened?
So no, at this point, I'm just like, dude, these guys are like literally my neighborhood watch like squad. Like,
Yeah.
These guys are police in the backyard, and like I'm not lying. Ever since that thing got like, I mean, I'll bring a picture and show you. Like it's concerning, but for the fact that it's like, but if you guys are just here for you're on the up and up, I'm here for it.
Cheapest security system you can ask for, huh?
Yeah,
If
yeah.
they sting one of your dogs, that could be bad too. But
I could look into it.
they're
They're resilient little guys.
if you trust them, just throw in that doggy door
I think
now.
it's just like this is like the this is biology, right?
Now's a good time.
Ecosystem.
Now's a good
They're kind
time.
of at the top of the food chain, so they kind of help.
Yeah.
So I think for now we're just gonna kind of let it ride.
Appreciate that warning though. Next time I come to your house.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just introduce yourself. They're pretty polite. They don't really mess with you too much.
All right. I feel like I should.
I think we have a
I
good
should-
understanding.
I feel like I could write a meme about this right now. Have you seen that?
I
Have you
also
seen
want
that
to see how
meme?
big they can build that.
Have you
thing.
seen that
Like, it's-
meme of the spider that the dude saves? And then there was. I love this because it's totally my dad. My dad would just save every bug. He wouldn't crush it. He would take it outside, let it go. And my mom would always just be like, "What are you doing? Just kill it," And so there's this dude, the same like in this like little cartoon. This guy saves this bug. His wife's yelling at him like, "Get rid of this, let's kill it, whatever." And and he says to the bug, he's like, "All right, I saved you this time. Next time it's my turn," And then like it shows the next scene where like a burglar's like breaking into their house, and then like in the next scene where it's like he gets a bullet to the head, and then it shows like the spider just like thumbs up with a sniper rifle. I'm just like, that could happen.
I know, dude.
That's why we got to save bugs instead of
I don't
killing
know.
them.
I don't know what happened, but I just had that switch like a few years back, and I'm like, dude, this little thing is just trying to survive.
How do you feel about big wolf spiders with hundreds of babies on its back?
Okay, so if you want to get into like Australia bugs,
Okay, I'm not talking about. We don't live in Australia, bro.
have you seen those bugs though?
I have. Have you seen
yeah.
the camel spiders?
Demons, dude.
Never going to visit
Have
Australia.
you seen those
I'm talking
spiders? dude?
Nephilim. Those fallen angels started doing you know what with
Yeah.
human or earthly
Dude.
spiders, and they made something weird.
The spiders are freaky. Like a good sized wolf spider is freaky.
Yeah, you gotta squash the infestation. Yeah, I don't think.
Problem is,
if it's
I
inside the house,
squashed
that's
one
a different
in my garage
story.
one time. It was a big one, and I didn't see that it had the
How
babies
big?
on its back. Oh, I mean, it had leg span was easily that big.
Like a sand dollar.
The body itself was like at least like bulbous
Bro.
and kind of like that big.
I've never seen a spider that
a
big.
massive spider. Yeah, they come
that's
from
gotta
the
die.
they come
I'm
from
sorry.
the big palm trees. A lot of times, I think they hang
From the
out.
depths of hell.
Yeah, basically.
Seventh realm.
I stepped on it. All I saw was like hundreds of tiny spiders.
No.
Just come from underneath my foot because they were on the mom's back.
That's what nightmares are made of. See, you
Hell
got to
I was so paranoid, but I read
Hell no.
I read when they're that small they don't survive without the mother. So
You got. I mean,
I kind of wrote on that for a little bit. We didn't get like arachnophobia,
I'm gonna say just
infestation,
you know
so that was good.
stick to wasps, and maybe
You mean wasp? Stick to wasp.
Wasps.
There's no S. We're gonna make it the sheep.
I'm gonna ask Google because they never. That is sad. There is an S on the end of it.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. So this is I saw a interesting, or I heard a podcast. It was actually called Meaning in the Middle. So shout out to those guys. It's a great podcast.
Great name.
It's an atheist and a Christian pastor, and they're like best friends.
Cool.
And so they just talk about things. It's really interesting. A lot of like introspection and stuff. But Ryan, it's Ryan and Landon. Ryan, who's the pastor of that of that pair, basically he told a story about, I think that it was like these priests who were going into, and this kind of sums up like a lot of what we're trying to do in this podcast, and we're trying to point out that we have our own sets of laws and structures and different like practices that really it's like, why are we doing this? Like if you really reflect, it's like, why are we still doing this right now? What's the purpose behind it? But basically these priests would go in to pray, and there was this cat that was like bugging them every time they wanted to go in to pray. So before they would pray, they'd go tie the cat to a tree, right? And then they would go pray. So at one point, pastors or priests retired or died or whatever it is, new priests came in, they continued to tie up this cat. And then one day the cat died. And so what do? Is they come in, find another cat to tie to a tree and then go in and pray. So it's like, it's one of these stories where it's like, obviously the cat was dead. The nuisance was gone. They didn't need to worry about it. But because you're not paying attention to me.
I am.
But because
New cat.
But because
New cat.
we needed that like, or that religious.
It brought us a sense of security or
Well,
comfort.
it's just one of those things that they were so used to doing it, they were doing it and they didn't even know why they were doing it. Mm-hmm. It's just because it was a ritual.
Ritualism. Yeah.
So it's exactly like what we do in the church, right? Especially with our structures and things that we've adopted over the last 50, 100 years, right? So really, it's kind of what we're trying to combat. I just thought it was a cool story, so wanted to bring it up.
I love that. Have you ever heard Bill Johnson? Shout out Bill, he's an incredible guy. He tells a story about a similar thing where, look at what we do now in the religious or spiritual world, and it's our blueprint is traced back to the scriptures, right? And so he kind of just tells a story of if you were to take a piece of wood, right, and cut 200 versions of that wood, or call it 100, if it's 2,000 years, let's say 20 years a generation. So let's just make 100 cuts, and every time you cut the wood, you use the previous piece of wood. So we're going to cut one piece of wood based off of the last piece of wood. Then we're going to use the new piece of wood to cut the next piece of wood. Then use the next. And he talks about, 100 iterations down the line, there's a very real chance that final product is going to be very different from the original piece of wood.
Yep.
And he basically goes into this thing of like, when we go to kind of create and build and structure our worldviews spiritually, both individually and corporately as communities, are we really aware and intentional about like, this is the blueprint, go back to the original blueprint, and this is how we cut the wood? Or are we just like, this is how we were raised, this is how the previous generation, passed off the baton and baton. Yeah, that is the word.
What's a battalion?
It's the people that fight people.
It's like a military force.
Yeah. I don't know where I was going. Yeah, that one's on me.
They hand off an entire military unit.
Yep. 800 people. I think it's actually 800 is the battalion. Yeah, I don't know
quite large.
where my mind was. Yeah.
Anyway,
so they
it's
hand the
fine.
baton.
Which is
correct.
much smaller.
There's not a lot of words that start with BAT
Bat.
except bat and baton and battalion. I can't think of. Doesn't matter. But he was basically saying it's a similar vibe. It's like if we're not careful, we'll end up with this product that's very different from the original version because we weren't mindful enough to go back to the original blueprint, and we just took what was handed to us and kind of try to improve it, based on whether it's a cultural thing. And I think for me, one thing I'm trying to approach this with, with a little more wisdom is realizing that like there are concepts in scripture that are meant to transcend culture. And then there are other concepts that clearly are like a part of culture.
Right.
And it's like, which things were kind of mostly a part of culture that got wrapped up in it.
That's
which
tough.
things transcend culture. And then
It's tough to navigate.
yeah, who knows? But it's just, yeah.
Yeah. And so, in one of these things, and the church is one of the things that we'll talk about today, but this whole idea, just aside from what we were talking about before, which is what those two stories really were kind of going back to that, us really doing life as Christians, from, second, third, fourth, fifth hand knowledge. But that's a really valuable point. But today wanted to talk about really just people idolizing things, right? So whether that's, the pastor, whether it's a worship leader and whatever, right? I mean, people are replacing God with his people, the people he made. And it's just like, now we're worshiping these people. And, in a general sense, when they slip up, it's almost like some people like who are really invested in those people and not God, it's like their faith slips up and they're just like, they question everything because
House of Cards. Yeah.
Yeah. So, wanted to dig into that a little bit, and just kind of see, how do you see the culture doing this, and like, what do we do to combat it?
Yeah. I think just there's human nature, and it's challenging when there's kind of this like top tier. And like, this is something that people would never really admit, but it's like I'll watch a show on ESPN, right? And they'll make these lists of like top tier, this is tier 1 of NBA players, basketball players. This is kind of tier 2, pair them up with one of the guys at the top. This is a tier 3 list. Like, we just like to do this thing where we like rank people, whatever.
We classify people.
Yeah. We like to put things in buckets,
Enneagram.
compartmentalize. Yeah.
Let's talk about that sometime.
Dude, I'm not a fan of these
The
tests.
Enneagram. Everyone talks about it. It's like
is
an
that
excuse.
just specific to the church? Because like,
I don't know. It's big in the church. It's just the way people are
like, I
able
need
to
to know
like
if-
classify people. But then the other thing, like people say, like it's good to know, like that way
Nonsense.
you know how to approach these people and stuff. And it's just like, well,
use your brain. Don't be an idiot.
yeah, that's
Maybe
true.
start there.
Yeah. Well, what I don't like is when people use it as an excuse. It's
Right.
like I mean, dude, how is Enneagram different from like, astrology, where it's just like, oh, I'm a Scorpio and Scorpios do this, and so I'm a 7, so 7s just are like this, so I can't help that.
I have
It's just like, are you serious?
I have a snippet I'm going to send to you, and you are going to laugh so hard. I need to remember this dude's name first, but it is so funny because he just roasts like someone that was just like that whole like, that time I went nuts. It's like, Mercury was in retrograde and like, I was all out of whack, and it's not me. And it was like, but it was like the extreme example of that thing. But I know I agree. I think
Mercury wasn't retro.
it's like this thing where we just, we absolve ourselves from the responsibility of being an adult because it's like a convenient excuse. You're like, well, I'm just, the Lord didn't give me patience. I'm crazy.
Yeah, Lord didn't give me patience.
I didn't get that one.
That's funny.
Sugar, spice, and everything nice. Kind of thing. But yeah.
You're saying we like to classify people.
Yeah, we love to put people in boxes. But the hard part is like, you think about a young guy that's coming into ministry, that's wanting to start a church. Like, who's he looking up to? And where's the line drawn between like, I mean, we talked about it before, but it's like, replication and duplication. And it's just, and maybe even this would kind of fall into the whole concept of just, it's become very common to just kind of use other people's sermons in today's world. It's like, because it's so accessible, like it's just a weird reality
I think it's a
in.
commodity, right? I think, you take a lot of people who aren't in the church, aren't whatever, they'll go to like a Tony Robbins type thing. They idolize Tony Robbins. Mm-hmm. They don't know any better. They've got
same.
Well, I mean, yes, but most
dude,
people,
he takes me to a Tony Robbins thing. I have no reference for this guy. We get there, San Jose, night 1, firewalk. I'm like, what?
Dude, is
like, we're walking on
joke.
fire tonight. I didn't listen to any of this dude's stuff beforehand, and by the end of the night, we're walking on fire.
Was that one of those smaller gatherings?
No.
that he did.
Yeah, like 10,000.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean,
No, it was big time. It's his biggest event.
oh, so the big ones they do that too. Wow.
Oh yeah. But it goes back to, dude, that goes back to just like when you read when you're around someone that's so authentic, and I would put my dad in this bucket too. It was just, he believed it so deeply and lived it so, like, it was like, he would call me out. I have so many memories being in the backseat of the car, and we would be like, the conversation would just be happening. He was always quiet. And like, somehow someone became the topic of the conversation. And within like 2 seconds, he shuts it down if we're saying anything negative about people. Like any ounce of like gossip or saying anything negative, he's literally just like, he literally just turned around and stop. He was, stop. We don't talk about people like that. Wow. And it's like something where, and even this dude, like the Liver King, who like, this dude is obsessed with eating animals nose to tail, and like, he's crazy. But because he is so invested, I watch a podcast and I'm like, I think I'm going to try eating animals nose to tail. Like,
Yeah, that's funny.
There's something about like raw, radical authenticity that's just like, it just draws. That's probably, part of the reason people are so drawn to Jesus is it was just so real, and there was no compromise within, what he.
Well, I think there's this human desire, on the idea of idolizing people. I mean, I think there's this human desire. I mean, you look at, I immediately when you told me what we were talking about, I thought of Dad, and it's like, okay, when you have your earthly hero who's also your spiritual kind of shepherd, just naturally that's created kind of conditioning in our minds where it's like, yeah, like these people are who we're supposed to strive to be, and so it's like we want them to be perfect. Like we need to know that exists and is possible, and because we need some hope for our lives that we can that we can do that.
So why would you look to that person instead of looking to Jesus as that example, knowing that people aren't perfect?
Well, I think
just because they're physically there.
Yeah, I mean, it's so real.
I think the whole idea of faith and just the abstractedness of
so having
God
that
and
tangible
Jesus.
example is really important. What you're saying to most people.
Well, I mean, the scriptures are just, it's all inside here.
Yeah.
Well, our experience. And that's largely part of my kind of journey right now. It's like the Bible makes it seem like Jesus is a really real person. I'm supposed to have a real relationship with him. I've had real relationships with people. And if it's not as real as what I already have, like, so am I doing it wrong? Are other people just like satisfied with this level of that experience? Like, I don't know, but I just knew for me personally, I was like, I'm clearly looking elsewhere for fulfillment and belonging and satisfaction.
I think you got to be careful, because if you rely too much on idolizing,
I'm not saying it's right.
Yeah,
I'm just saying that it's our nature,
our natural
to want
tendency.
that,
Sure.
Yeah,
but we get caught in it. And then,
what's so tricky is because on the flip side of that, when you're that person who's elevated, you like that feeling of people liking you.
For sure. It's your identity. How?
So what would happen?
Always.
What would happen if it was discovered that, because so Tony Robbins, going back to that example, he's not he's not pointing people to God, but he is pointing to people to themselves, like, right?
Their best version of themselves.
So it is, he's pointing to something else other than himself, like, right? To get people to get this idea, but they still idolize him. What if it were to come out that he was just a fraud? He did a bunch of shady shit and whatever, right? What kind of effect do you think that would have on his following or his people?
Well, I think it'd be significant, but I think in the people who've tried to attempt it or try to take something he's done out of context, I've been in the room with him many times, where he's like, look, I might in the moment say the wrong thing. I might be taken out of context. He said, but you can look at 40 years of my life and try to disprove me, So I think what he just very humbly acknowledges, like, yeah, look in the moment with emotion, with whatever. I may say the wrong thing. I may not say the right thing in the right context. I may be misunderstood with what I really mean. But when you peel back and look at my life over 40 years, like, you cannot argue why I'm here, why I'm doing what I'm doing, that I am here for your best outcome, to try to improve you however I need to do that. So
that's such a strong position, because you basically taking people's, the wind out of their sails when they try to like attack you. I don't see many pastors come to that kind of like place of humility. I don't know if it's because of they feel like if they don't have that kind of position, they feel like it weakens the message of Christ. I think sometimes I feel like they do feel that way. I don't know if it's a pride thing for some people, but if pastors would just like always remind people that they're human. I mean, because there's definitely like, you're like, oh, if you struggle with this and that, and it's just like, but I mean, it's kind of like, by the way you carry yourself and you're on stage and like you clearly are trying to exude this charisma and get people to follow you. It's like, you can see where, I mean, obviously Tony Robbins is motivating people and all this stuff. I mean, that's different. But like when you're trying to point people to someone else, right? I don't think I've ever heard that from stage. That's a great thing. Like, it's just, hey, look at the past however many years of my life. Is that like, let that be the testament if I may not say the right thing in the moment.
Yeah, and that probably just shows you why you've got him who's got a following of millions. And no pastor has that type of pedigree.
Well,
I mean, there's a handful that have really strong following who, but look, it's counter human nature, because I mean, a lot of these guys put in a lot of effort, and the expectation is that they're supposed to give all the glory to God. It's like, I've been grinding for 50 hours a week, 6 years.
Where's my recognition?
And I'm supposed to take no credit.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I mean, that's it's
tough.
counter.
It's not human.
It's just counter our nature. So, so I think that's just where expectations on these people are just so difficult.
Well, I think
there's
very little grace.
Yeah.
And
yeah, it's interesting because there was a relevant article that I'd taken a few things from here. Relevant magazine. There's an article called "The Danger of Idolizing Christian Celebrities." Yeah, so we should be concerned when our expectation for a Christian leader becomes more about what they can provide for us and less about who they are leading us towards. We're basing our faith on them instead of God. Yeah, and I mean, and then at the same time, we want them to be normal, everyday people, but we can't have it both ways. Like, it's like celebrity stars are just like us, but then, when they show us their normal brokenness, we skewer them for having vulnerabilities and making mistakes. And, again, what you just said, there's another, I'm just reading like little snippets of this, but we are much more willing to offer grace to people outside the church, but inside the church, we are stingy with it. When we find ourselves disappointing Christian leaders, which we inevitably will, that's true. I mean, right? I mean, you don't like fall in love with a pastor at your church, and then all of a sudden, like 30 years later, you're still in love with him, never have had any issues with him or her. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Jeez, JJ, come on.
We
talked about this.
Yeah.
When we find ourselves, hey, I've never said I'm perfect, okay, guys.
That's why you're
Girls,
so real and
I did it
desirable.
again. I said, guys, gosh, can I call?
Wow.
I can call you guys, right?
Homies?
Yeah.
I think it's gender
we're all guys.
neutral.
We're homies.
Guys has turned into a gender neutral thing. I think, yeah, right. All right.
Agree.
Yeah, and yeah. So basically, what the article's saying is just like, we idolize these Christian celebrities and they fail, and then they we really need to reflect on ourselves. And it's like, I mean, who are we following here? And that's different from, people having a beef with people like Carl Lentz, who had that whole issue, just because he not only was basically punishing people for doing like, I mean, you could argue he was doing worse things than they were doing, yet he was like coming down hard on these people with no grace, and then also leveraging his following to make all this money and have all these things, right? That's different to me. but but like,
well, dude,
we
imagine
just,
imagine the circumstance where you are responsible for shepherding this church, these people's lives, whatever. You have somebody on your staff have some kind of failure, and you've got to balance grace for them as a human, but also balance, hey, we've got a whole congregation that expects this to be taken seriously. Right?
yeah, it
Yeah,
is
and we come
interesting.
from a background where it's like, I mean, there is no mercy. Like it's like
It's terrible.
It's like if this happens, boom, and like half of the time that story doesn't even come out. Like it's just like they resigned in disgrace, and it's like we're not even going to talk about what actually happened. Like we're just gonna. That's what was interesting to me. Like when I was at a church in Missouri, I don't necessarily agree with this either, but they had like a family meeting. I think we talked about this, but they basically like publicly rebuked this guy in front of the entire church, which is
I remember you
was
telling me that.
horrible to watch. And I was close with his sons. I was sitting next to them in the crowd, thousands of people. And I mean, you're like, no one should ever have to go through this. Like this is like,
I mean, was the guy repentant?
for sure.
See, and that's the thing.
Well,
Jesus
so
never
it
did
came
that.
out. Well, exactly. So I don't agree with it. But the interesting part of that though,
He always showed all kinds of grace to people who were
100%.
repentant.
Yeah, and I don't condone it, but what was interesting though is because they were so transparent about what actually happened. Like there was no gossip, there was no like everyone just literally felt for this guy that most of us knew, and it was like there wasn't a lot of judgment. If anything, it was just like your heart breaks for that situation, that family.
So in a way,
But,
they
like-
did something that was productive, but they should have
Yeah, I
gone
wouldn't
about it
agree
differently.
about how they did it,
Yeah.
but it's like when someone just resigns and then there's no context, it's like people are gonna talk, and it's like it never made sense to me. Like, what's the reason that we have to keep it? But either way, I think to me that I have a very extreme view on this whole concept of restoration because I think too many people are hyper focused on the perception of the masses. And it's like, okay, so do we destroy this dude's psyche? And I mean, I can't imagine going through something like that publicly. And then, I mean, the shame that I would just carry. I mean, you're dragging your family through it. Like it's gotta be impossible to be in those shoes. And it's just so hard for me. 'Cause like, it's easy for people to look at a situation like that and be like, drop the axe, right? Like drop the hammer. But everyone, if they found themselves in that situation, it's like, I've talked about it before. Like when I was like basically stepping down from the church I was at, cause I was, helping with music and just got a DUI, like called pastor the day after, broken. So just like, I mean, disappointing yourself, but like, whatever. But in a weird way, there was also an element of like peace that was like
Sure.
finally released from like this burden of trying to have this front of perfection.
Hold on, stop talking. Sorry, there's a buzz on your mic.
All that wasp talk.
Yeah, they're coming.
Well, the gate gets rid of it, but we're gonna have to fix that for the next time. Sorry, listeners. Go on.
Yeah, I just think end of the day, because of how it's typically been approached, like when you have a spiritual, I heard it for a sec, when you have a spiritual leader walking through some challenging things, it's like because of how they've seen other people dealt with, now it's like clearly like I'm ashamed of this thing because I'm hiding it.
Yeah, keep talking.
But there's a part of me that wants this thing. And because of how I expect this to go down on the other side of me being open and honest, I'll take this thing to my grave. And, you know, I understand from a human perspective why we do that, but it also makes me wonder, like, what would it look like if someone was willing to say, like, hey, I know this is messy, but like, we never promised perfection. And end of the day, like, I know it hurts and we'll walk with them through it. And, you know, we can come to terms on what the actual restoration process looks like. But to just blanket say, like, any issue, you're 2 years out and you got to go through this program, this program, this program. Like, when someone sees, when the punishment is so tangible.
What did restoration look like for Jesus? I mean, during that time?
I don't know, man. He revealed a deeper level of himself to people, and then just straight up said, "Go and sin no more." Like, and that's why, like, even when, you know, after his baptism, he
crazy?
says, like, just repent because the kingdom of heaven is like at hand. Like, it's not like somewhere we're going if we like do good enough here. It's like there's a way to live that can introduce the kingdom of heaven into your life now.
Right. Yeah. And the other thing too is you create these processes and these roadblocks and different things that, like, people know that's what's in store for them if they slip up. Mm-hmm. So then all of a sudden, instead of seeking help for anything, people just start hiding stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Jesus was like, "You're forgiven, go sin no more." Okay. If that's what I know is in store, I'm not trying not to sin, but if I do, I feel much better about telling Jesus or whoever that I'm sinning if that's the kind of response I'm going to get.
I mean, just the reality, like, how many, like just a percentage, what percent of pastors who have a moral failure, some failure, are like running to their elders and to their mentors and to their board to talk to them?
No one, because at that point, at least it would probably not get to the point where it does. It would have gotten taken care of before it got to that point.
But what if we were able to build cultures like that?
We need to. I'm thinking that's why we bring awareness to this stuff. Yeah. And
it's challenging. It is challenging. When it's like a lead pastor versus like maybe an associate or something like that. But
yeah,
end of the day though, again, once you idolize people, when we find out that they're actually people and not perfect, somehow that shakes our faith. Like,
yeah.
That's what's so funny. It's like, you can look at the evolution over the last 30 years of like, youth pastors probably get the worst rap, but it's like you go to like a church conference and it's like a bunch of little Carl Lentzes running around here. Like, oh, you guys wear Charleston's and swoop necks now? Like,
yeah, right.
You're from rural like Arkansas. Like, I know for a fact you guys don't dress like that.
Dress like that, yeah, like, for sure.
Like, but there's just this constant need to like emulate or replicate, because it's like, this guy is who I view as successful,
right?
And like one of the first times when I moved to Florida, I went to a church. And I was starting to help out with youth, and it was like a big youth night because like the lead pastor was coming, right? So it's like, get all your friends. It's like they kind of hyped it up a little more went into that night.
That's funny. Normally youth is like, we don't want the lead pastor there.
Yeah, I don't know. Who knows how that came about?
Yeah.
Well, the youth pastor, I don't want to divulge too much. It's not important.
What a different way to do it.
Not important. But I literally was in this thing. I was helping out with music. And it was so ironic because I almost felt like it was like a Christian. Here we go, Christianese. It was a God thing. Like, it was literally, I just listened to Andy Stanley preach this sermon that was like pretty solid, right? Like, it's like he did a good job. And then like a week later, I listened to this dude give the same sermon, like same jokes, same like points the whole way through. Doesn't once mention that it was anyone else's sermon.
That's tough.
And you just sit there and you're like, I started thinking like, God, why? Like, out of all the sermons I could have listened to a week ago and out of all the places I could be right now, what are the freaking odds? And like,
same jokes is tough.
How do you look at this? Like, how do you look at this spiritual leader and just think like, you know what you're doing?
He's a robot. Yeah, that's tough.
And do you want to go into this whole thing?
Well, hold on. Nathan, thoughts on that while I change his cable out?
Thoughts on what specifically?
I mean, restoration or, any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, look, it needs to be, I guess my viewpoint from an outsider looking in, I think again, balancing, hey, this is a serious thing, like the 99% matter so much that we have to handle this serious. It needs to be a serious thing, right? Because it's like part of the challenge with kids, and when there's no consequence, there's no kind of behavior, so
Right.
but then I've been reading a lot. It's like, okay, well, I mean, how do we train animals? It's like, well, we reward when they do good things and we ignore when they do bad things.
We can take care of that later.
Right. So we don't like physically abuse or shame or
Or you can do it now.
whatever to animals. We
Right.
just focus on rewarding the positive behavior, not really just highlighting or jamming on the negative behaviors.
Yeah. So how do you do that with pastors? You throw them
Treat 'em like animals?
Throw them little fish when they do good.
Hey, do a flip. Here's a fish.
I think but to me, so much of that just starts with the pastor, just being real. Like if you're a pastor and you're struggling with things, it's like how do you benefit by hiding what you're struggling with? Like I probably wouldn't come out and tell the whole church I have an addiction to pornography if I was a pastor and that was my thing. That'd be tough. But like, I mean, if you however you want to address it,
No,
like,
the
more that you put in the shadows, like it's just this. It's like whatever you feed is going to grow. End of the day, and like if you just make a habit of coming out, like that's why for me, like there's a lot of people I know for a fact that are concerned about me with this podcast, and I'm just like, are you worried about the reputation of what you feel like you're a part of? Are you worried about my salvation? Either way, it's like the first reality that we have to address is like, I'm done being in the shadows and hiding and masks and imposter syndrome. Like, and of course I wish the process wasn't messy, but what do you do? It's like for me, if I were to hear a pastor really open up, be raw about his challenges and struggles, dude, I can relate to that.
What's crazy is I think people are so hesitant to be like that, but if they were more like that, people would love them so much more.
100%.
Yeah,
I think that
completely
humility. We're so scared for other people to see our flaws or imperfections,
No, because right now I've heard
and it's what makes you relatable.
Absolutely.
I've heard so many people just like talk about our pastor we have now as like just I've never seen him sin. I've never seen him do anything questionable. It's just like I'm not that you're supposed to as a lead pastor, but I mean that's why I was saying before that like a lot of pastors are just seen as untouchable. Mm-hmm. So they elevate themselves like above everyone else, like over righteous kind of. Some people don't do it on purpose, but it's just kind of what happens when they appear to never be relatable. And that's why I don't know. I was telling you guys, it's like I had gone to a service this last weekend, and this pastor comes up on stage to kind of close everything out. It's the first time he had come up. He was the lead pastor, and all of a sudden, like he had this weird, that reverend accent. People get, you know what I'm talking about? They're just like,
I mean,
I
think I do.
you know.
I don't want to cast judgment on this fella.
Well, I think where he just kind of starts talking like when we talked about people praying. It's just like he's talking like
Feels fabricated.
no one talks this way, right? And all of a sudden you're coming up and giving us this like spiel. Like you sound like a charlatan.
Are we talking like, and give it your Lord? Like we're just going in like an accent, or just more like
Not that
enthusiasm?
intense. But yeah, I mean, all the like Christianisms and all these different things, he was doing it. And it was a way of like presenting himself in the way that if you heard it, you would know it, right? But it's basically just the pastors that like elevate themselves with a change of speech, right? They just like
the anointing dropped.
Yeah, right. Something. It's just like I have to have this different
cranking.
voice so that when I come up on stage, people know that I'm different. Right? That's what it feels like to me. And then at that point, I immediately shut off and didn't listen to anything he had to say. And that's what happens. But I, and it's just it's a turn off,
may
right?
God have mercy on your soul.
So anyway, we've talked a lot about pastors. I did see another article here: 6 ways your church could be practicing idolatry. Because I was just doing some searches on stuff. It's interesting. The first one here is idolizing the local church.
Ooh, I'm big on this one.
Which is crazy, right? I mean, because as soon as I say that, we all know people who are like, I love my church, my church, my church, my church.
How many
and
times?
what they're thinking about is the
Dude, how
building.
many T-shirts have you seen?
Right? Dude,
You know?
we literally came out with shirts that were like, I love my church. Didn't wear it one time. I was like, I'm not wearing that.
Yeah.
No, I just like,
No, I mean the
It's
car
just marketing.
car magnets, like all of the stuff that just people are like, it's just like promoting the brand of the church.
well, how many times have you heard from a stage that like the local church is the hope of the world?
It's the bride of Christ.
Bride of Christ and stuff like that. Right. Yeah. Yeah. But it's like the actual verse says, Christ in me, the hope of the nations, the hope of the world.
Yeah.
And we like to do this subtle switch because it's just like, plant yourself in this house because a tree that's planted by the water will always be fruitful. And it's like, dude, it's not the local church is like, it's Christ in you. Like, and I know that's supposed to be the church. But again, back to our previous conversations, it's like most people, when they think of the church, it's just this building, this organization,
when you're talking
affiliated
about-
with these other churches.
Yeah, when you talk about the
But
T-shirts and all that stuff, like that's promoting the building, the organization. It's not promoting the group of people.
Well, because what Christ in me, the hope of the nations, literally means it's an individual thing.
Yeah,
And then you gather with other individuals that have that conviction, and it can become a corporate thing.
Right.
But first and foremost, always must be an individual thing.
yeah, but now it's like let us put a label on this thing so that when people come, they can feel like they belong to this.
Well, it's
it's
some
just
people
like, yeah.
imagine just going to church and you're like, oh, my church does so much for our city, and you don't give to the church. You just show up for an hour, drink their coffee,
You're not the church.
and you're just like, but you think you are.
You think you are
And you're just like, oh, I'm involved in this
you show up
organization.
in
Well,
this
Dude,
place.
so that's the problem,
You wear
right?
the
The problem is the people. The church have had to. I've been sitting on this thought. I heard a pastor friend of mine say this a few weeks ago. It's like, so many times our focus is wrong. Like we're not trying to motivate people to get involved to serve on a Sunday. We're trying to equip them to go
24/7.
serve Monday through Saturday. Mm-hmm. And it's because most people don't do this that the church has to create all these programs. Hey, we're all going to get together to serve because y'all won't do it on your own. Mm-hmm. So now we've got to rally this group of people to go to this place, this group of people to go to this place. And so the church has, just because a lot of people suck and are selfish, have had to create all these programs and groups where I think the church is getting credit by accident. Mm-hmm. Because the church does care, the leadership does care about the community, right? But because their people aren't doing it.
Yeah.
But you're right. I guess what I'm talking about when I say idolizing the church is it's a global. I mean, not global. It's especially an issue in the United States and here in the Western world because when I mean, it's just you'll see people move from other towns. They'll be like, oh, I need to find a good church. I need to find a good place, whatever. And then they start to speak like, I love my church. My church is so great. Like we do all these things, but like you were saying.
I do love my church.
Yeah, I know.
Am I one of these people?
Well,
You got a dope church.
Maybe.
depends on your heart.
That's fair.
Depends on your heart.
As far
Check
as
your heart.
churches go.
Heart check. Doyle.
John Chris.
But it's just like, I mean, when you talk about, you get so heavy into the branding and all this stuff. And granted, like no church is perfect. Like, I could say I love my church, but like, I could say I love all churches and hate all churches equally. Because they're all this, like, many of them are the same. Like to where, I mean, they're not perfect. They're not going to have perfect people, and so it's just like, and that's fine because that's how God made us. But, I'm not going to hold the church up on a pedestal because, I mean, it's just like I've seen people get hurt by the church. They leave, other people come, they love it. It's just like everyone's experience is different. So it's not about, the church or the staff or the pastor or any of that. It is about the people. It's about community, about relationships. But I mean, so like what do you think, we talked about going overseas and churches like overseas and missionary, work and stuff like that. When you go visit a church or build a church, or you can do these things in other countries. How much time do you think they spend talking about their church brand versus how much they spend talking about Jesus or God?
I mean, yeah, none.
It's not like come to, I don't.
It's literally like on the board. It's like Iglesia de Jesus Cristo. It's like the Church of Jesus Christ. Like they don't even have a name. They don't have branding.
Right.
Like they don't have flyers. Like it's like third world. I mean, I remember being in Los Momes. It's a kind of suburb of Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic. Most of these people are living in like horrible situations, dirt roads. I mean, we would just go out and just like we'd be running around like, ¿Quieres like venir a iglesia anoche? Like we just go out in the streets and yell at people like, you want to come to church tonight? Like, and it was just, they would meet any night. I mean, it's just a different experience. And like, this has kind of always been something that I've wrestled with internally.
Because my thought is like, and while I'm thinking about it, I mean, if you're just going to go to church and just hear a message and do worship, you go to any church you want. Like you go to a different church every week.
Bro, you could do it online. You don't even need to go to
I'm
the
just
church.
saying, if you have a community and you have your group of people that you do life with, and you're all Christians or whatever, I mean, you don't have to all be Christians. I mean, you do life together, and like we do life together.
Yeah.
And if you have those group of people, why do you need to be loyal to a church? You really don't need to, right?
I mean, I would agree, but that's not a very popular opinion.
No, it's not. It's not a very popular opinion. I'm taking it to the extreme, right? To prove the point. It's just like the reason we need this branding is because we're not doing a good job at connecting people and making people feel like the community. They need to be part of the brand. We need membership. We need something to hold these people.
Too many people just check the generosity box by like showing up to a church on a Sunday because it's like, oh, my church does good things. I go there, once or twice a month, and now I don't have to feel bad for being selfish and keeping all my money all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just projecting.
Which is why you still feel empty, because you really don't understand generosity unless it requires your personal sacrifice or resource.
Right.
To do it.
Well, and that I only say that because we look at statistics, like such a small percentage of people are actually actively giving and partaking in like this experience. Like any church, I'm going to guess a very small minority are people really consistently giving and consistently serving. So it's like, the problem is, we've talked about this a lot before, but it's like if I think about leading an organization like that, all of my resources go to those people, to those people that are giving and actively serving and engaged.
Yeah.
I don't care about who wants to like, it's like any organization, they say like 20% of the people do 80% of the work. Or it's like Jordan Peterson even talks about just the laws of the universe. Like the biggest stars get the most gravity. Like it's just, we have this obsession because our privileged culture, we want everything to be fair. It's like fairness was never a part of the order of nature or even the kingdom of God. Mm-hmm. Nowhere do you see that. It's like to those who have worked hard, they're going to get the most. And to those that want to be lazy, they get nothing. Like it's just the reality of it. But now it's like we have all these people because it's, again, our metrics. What's success? We get obsessed with butts and seats, and we think that actually translates to real life change and success. And so it's just like,
come on, dude, every number has a name.
Yeah, right. Oh man, triggered.
Just feel like you belong, or you believe.
Yeah, it's like, dude, when I look at it, it's like, yeah, no wonder we're spending all of our time trying to figure out how to get more people involved instead of just really, really developing deep, like beautiful relationships with the people who are actually involved. I mean, think about what Jesus would do. He reveals the kingdom of heaven and he says, follow me or get lost. And he doesn't go back. Yeah. Like, I feel like now we're just like, we're sending people their fifth frickin' letter, being like, thanks for visiting us that one time on Easter. Like, how are you?
Come back for a free car wash.
Dude, like just focus on the people.
It is so interesting. There. So Luke and I have talked a lot about, as we're pretty involved with our youth program, and it's like, well, how do we, when you look at the need and the hurt in the world, in our sphere as the youth and the high schools, and you meet with these high school principals, and it's like, yeah, before COVID, we needed this much help from our mental health and social work counselors. Now we need literally 5x that 2 years later. And it's just like, man, this is crazy. And it's like, and you guys see, I have some of these kids come to the office sometimes and we hang out. It's like, okay, I understand how you do this one-to-one. And the question that we're asking is, well, how do we do this one-to-many? Well, Nate can't have 500 high school friends that I text and follow up with, and how's it going?
On top of your wife and 4 children and business. And
yeah, it's just not possible. So the only way to do it is to build up that team of people.
People need to catch
everybody
fire.
can have one-to-one, right?
Yeah.
So the question is, okay, well, so we've obviously done a bad job of that up to this point because we've not been aware that we need to do this, right? And so thinking through, okay, hey, we've promoted some of these students to be student leaders, and it's like, well, we gave them like a promotion with no perks. We said, hey, we want you to do this, but we're not going to invest any more into you, but we expect you to be here to serve extra at this time. We need you to give up more of your time, resource, whatever. And so we're something that stuck out to me from a Hillsong conference a couple of months ago that I feel like has been haunting me is, Pastor Brian was talking about, it's like, hey, look, I can't worry about everybody on the periphery. Like, I just can't physically communicate with hundreds of thousands of people. He said, my job is the circle that I have influence in to invest into them, to resource them, in the hope that they will do that to their next wave of people, right? So we're looking at saying, okay, how do we do that, with these next group of kids so that I can't reach 50 people, right? But if we can really invest into 15 kids and they each reached 3 people, like we've almost hit 50 people,
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. It's interesting to think about, like, you go back to the creation of the early church and it was primarily Jesus' apostles that were kind of heading this thing up, right? As far as I know, I mean, there are a lot of, like, if you look into it, like, some people think Peter had a wife, but largely most of them single guys, right? Just kind of, they never got married, or at least we don't know about it. But when you think about it, like, now in today's world, we have pastors and it's their vocational career and they work like 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. It's like, well, I don't know how much you can get done 9 to 5 Monday through Friday because everyone else is at their job 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. And it's like your role is like, okay, come up with your sermon, which half of y'all are jacking other people's sermons. So that's a whole different conversation. But it's like, how are you going to invest in people when your billable hours are like when everyone else is working? It's like, it makes sense. Like, if you're going to commit to spiritually leading people, buddy, your nights and weekends better be available. Like, how can you connect with people? So this is what it looks like. It's just like, okay, well, I'll just meet someone for lunch every day. And then it looks like, it's like, dude, how much are you sacrificing? Like, I've been behind the scenes. I've seen the curtain pulled back. It's like, this could be a part-time job, like, in terms of like how many things you actually have to do. Yeah. And it's like, I think most people would probably be upset if they saw their pastor's like paycheck versus if they followed around for a week and were just like, what do you actually do?
Yeah, I mean,
I'm just saying, I don't think that would go well.
I mean, we're straying so far from where it started. Again, I mean, people didn't get paid to do this. I mean, it was a sacrifice, right? And also, it's just like you had more pastor-like people that were a part of the church to where you saw them interacting with people, and it wasn't just the pastor's job.
Well, and you got guys like Paul, who's kind of spearheaded the thing, was literally knocked off his horse on the road to Damascus and blinded for 3 days by Jesus. And like, it's like, if that happened to me, like, okay, bet, I'll start a church. Like, but it's like, we got too many people that like are seeing people out here.
No,
like,
I mean, people,
dude, like that goes back to idolizing. It's dude, these are pastors and like, they also get to wear like off-white clothes and like have super nice things. Like, I could be a pastor. That'd be sick.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I wonder how many people just like raise their hand. They're called to ministry because of like, they see that stuff. And it's like, you know what? This pastor doesn't do anything.
Well, we over spiritualize it.
This is a great job.
Because I mean, dude, I just come from a different world where it's like, when did you get the call, brother? And it's like, 6th grade camp and the Lord. And it's like this whole thing where it's just like, and this kind of goes to a larger topic for me, where it's like, there's this movement within Christianity that's just like, just surrender everything to Jesus and let him run your life. But it's like, okay, I understand that is biblical, but like also context. Like that means it's time for you to do a lot of work, buddy, on self-discovery and awareness, and say like, I don't just get to be like, Jesus, you can have everything. And then like, but you don't actually do any work. And then we all know people who are like, so how have you been in the church for decades and it seems like you're becoming less and less like Jesus? You're just like, what? I feel like you might not be doing it right.
Yeah.
Like there's this weird thing where like we just think that just this blind faith belief, and it's just like now I don't have to work on me because I just, crucify the flesh every day, which they probably don't even understand what that really means.
All right. So let's give pastors a break for a second.
Well, I mean, I think it's important to clarify. I think a lot of them have the right heart.
Correct.
Yeah.
I think what we're talking about is like
The lack of awareness.
the actions could be a little different, a little I mean,
It's easy with the systems and structures we have set up now. It's easy for pastors to get lazy and complacent. And it's just like, it's like a,
well, I think it's almost
it's like a ninth grade teacher that reuses the same curriculum every year.
It's almost like the job description has been very, very heavily like influenced, right? Like from, hey, shepherding people and coming up with ways to reach the lost to now, hey, we need 15 meetings after every Sunday to talk about what went wrong, what could we do better.
Dude, meetings, oh my God. Meetings in churches.
It's like, well, wait a minute. Like,
It's like this could have been an email part 20 million.
No, there's there are churches that spend whole days.
so, but I'm just
with
saying
nothing but meetings.
the whole frame of reference, like the whole job description of a pastor has just gotten so tainted where it's like it's not the people's fault. It's
like we need to redefine and bring it back.
I can have the church pay for breakfast and lunch for me every day because I'm just going to go hang out with some of my friends who go to church and hit a quick meeting here or there.
Got to get at least one round of golf in.
Yeah,
Doing that ministry.
Got to, man. It's my quiet time with the Lord. 4 hour interrupted hours on the links.
When it's like, okay, if you really approach this from like just a really business standpoint, if you had actual KPIs that pastors had to meet that were really relevant to biblical calling for pastors, it's like, wow, that would really radicalize the church.
They won't
do that.
Again, don't hold your breath. Yeah. Again, it's what you said earlier. I think, what is it about human nature that makes us so afraid of vulnerability and humility when we also see like the flip side is like the more vulnerable and humble you would be willing to be, the more it would actually help you reach people. Like it's so bizarre to me that just human nature is just, we're so hyper focused on the PR aspect and the reputation that it's like we can't even show a crack in the foundation. Like this thing's got to be squeaky clean.
Right.
And we even have, doctrines and teachings like, it's like super high value for purity. It's like, look, I get it. But again, back to the awareness thing. It's like Tony talks about this a lot. Like people make big life altering decisions at places of like either the mountaintop or the frickin' like bottom. It's a rock bottom experience, or I experienced something that was so great that I'm choosing this forward. And it's too easy. Like, and for me, and everyone has their own opinion. I personally would rather make decisions out of the mountaintop for not to have to hit rock bottom all the time. And the sad reality
all the time
that it's like every big decision I've ever had to make, it's like, well, I tried this and it's pretty much ruined everything. So maybe let's try something else. And I don't know. It's first you have to be okay with the messiness of it.
Right.
Like we just don't want to like this happened. I mean, the same thing. It was the pastor that ultimately got removed at the church I was at was placed under another pastor's care to like restore him. Turns out that other pastor was also going through all kinds of nonsense. And it was just like, no judgment. The sad part to me is that it's just like this culture of masks and shadows and hiding. does not end well and it never will.
It's this created by
And when it's hyper focused on punishment,
well, yeah,
because we want
created
people to
on
know
this false sense of rehabilitation. That's really just like, hey, we're gonna ream you in front of the church.
and that's why, like, dude, if it's me, if someone messes up and they want to stay and work through it, you know, because some people just want to run, that's fine. But if someone really wants to stay, like, dude, bring it and be brutally honest.
Yeah.
And then tell him, like, he is part of this family and we're gonna restore him together.
Yeah.
And if that's not okay with you, like, if I had a son and my son was messing up, like, I don't know if I've told this story on the pod, but Hodges has a great story of, like, his son was caught TPing a house. Mm-hmm. And he shows up, cops came, the kids were all sitting in handcuffs on the side of the road. And he just walks up, every single parent he's seen it, they're just yelling at their kids, just yelling at him. How could you do this? I'm so disappointed in you. I raised you better than this. And he just sees his son sitting there. He just walks over and sits down. And he just, hey, bud, how you doing? Like, I want you to know I've never loved you more than I love you right now. And you've never needed me more than you need me right now. Mm-hmm. But, like, it's okay. Like, we're going to get through this. And now, I mean, fast forward, they have an incredible relationship. He's on staff at the church, being empowered to really lead and kind of follow his dreams. And, you know, there's just something to be said for someone that's willing to just, I don't care about the optics right now. It's time to, like, restore my child. And I don't care who it hurts.
Yeah, he's got I don't remember the verse, but he references, it's like all we want to do is, like, punish and focus on the negative instead of reminding them of the positive that's in them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's huge.
Nice. A couple other things I wanted to talk about, just switching gears kind of. Obviously, idolizing money and materialism, we know about that. That's not really something we need to talk a whole lot about.
Doesn't end well.
Not that controversial. Idolizing worship team and experience is big. Yes, I mean,
I'm guilty there.
yeah, I mean, whether it's Hillsong, Elevation, Bethel, you know, you name it, right? All these individual personalities are coming out now. Like Maverick City's just kind of an all-star team of all of these types of personalities.
Mm-hmm. A lot of collabs.
Yeah, and it's the same thing where people just idolize. And I think, a lot of times you can see it go to people's heads too, right? Like, it's just like people that, like, it's just almost like they really wanted to be a mainstream artist, but they saw this opportunity to be a Christian artist instead so they could be more popular. And so now it's
probably won't get super far in mainstream, but we could take over Christian music.
Yeah, right. It's just like, yeah, we could own this. And so, yeah.
We got holes in our jeans.
Probably make just as
They
much
won't be
money.
ready for this. Yeah.
They make a lot of money. Yeah, and it's almost sickening to, like, I mean, and you know, and I've heard people say, like, oh yeah, so and so won't even set food in this place, you know, left for less than $15,000, which is small compared to mainstream artists. But it's just like when you consider, like, the message they're sending and the message, you know, they're portraying with their music, it's like, whoops, it's like, what I mean, you know, is that cool? Like, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure they have expenses, they have, you know, tech teams and stuff that they have to, you know, but it's like for a solo artist to go in there to be like, yeah, I mean, you know, I'm gonna need 15 G's. Just
Dude,
like, all right, well,
that was my main, and I was obviously never on those kind of stages, you know, when I was in college involved in stuff. I mean, we maybe have, you know, 5,000-6,000 people. So, I mean, the reality is, like, you do feel godlike in those moments where you're just
10,000 people.
5,000 people packed out, and they're doing anything you tell them to do. Like, they're with you for the ride. I mean, that's why, I mean, I was always so aware, you know, in that world. And I had, you know, I had good people around me. And, but I mean, the reality was, like, essentially Lucifer was heaven's worship leader. Mm-hmm. And, you know, in the creation account. And it's like, boom, there's a fine line between leading people and wanting, like, that kind of glory for yourself. Yeah. And it's a unique thing that because music is so
emotional.
It just we connect on such a deep level with those experiences. And so I think even more than anything, like with a lot of what we've talked about, like the worship team and those worship leaders
think about, you go to
need that freedom to really like, dude, there cannot be hiding in your life.
Think about it, go to a
because-
Hillsong or Elevation concert.
Evolution.
Is that a new band?
Evolution concert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I see the parody videos.
Oh man.
It's going to be the upside down instead of the elevation.
It's awesome.
Welcome to evolution. Sorry.
No, but like people are chanting and like, you know, they get crazy excited when they walk onto stage. It's
Right.
like, it's just like, how many of these people are like excited to worship God right now, right? And how many of these people are just like excited to see their people?
Pastor Steven.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Don't even.
I do love Steven Furtick, though. I'm not, no shade.
Sure. I'm not as big of a fan, but hey, God can use everyone. So
Even a man from Monk's Corner.
Monk's
Was it
Corner.
North Carolina? Monk's Corner? I think where he's from.
Yeah, so there's a couple more sections, like just things here. People idolize the Bible, which is kind of profound, honestly. You know, and the summary of that section, because I know we're already over an hour.
And
It's
that's
just,
not okay.
well, it's the Bible's the word of God, but it's not God himself. Essentially the idea. You know, it can't save us from our sins, protect us from evil, do anything that God does. Only God does those things. It's our map, it's our teacher, and he gives us the knowledge of God that he wants us to have, but it's not the teacher or the Savior himself. It's just this stuff we've talked about before, where the Bible points to God, but it's ultimately our relationship with God and the Spirit of God that's supposed to guide us and lead us.
I mean, that's, you know, I've talked in length about this before, but that was kind of where I kind of just drew the line in the sand. I was like, I know everything the book says about him. That's arrogant. I don't know everything, but I have a pretty good grip on what the book says about him. I want to know him. And it's like, if my experience or relationship with him is confined to this book, I look at that as the same way if I'm supposed to have an intimate relationship with someone strictly via text message. And I mean, if that's what it is, then all right. But it's something in me. It's like, there has to be more. And we talked about this before, but it's like, dude, all the people in Genesis for thousands of years, like the Bible wasn't even, the first parts of the Bible wasn't written until Moses, and all of like Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Noah, like all of these people that we idolize had no book.
Yeah.
Like literally not even because that's what everyone's like, well, they have the Old Testament. These people had nothing.
I want to read some of this because I feel like, I mean, granted, I'm not saying this is interesting.
Plagiarizing.
I'm reading this. It's checkmychurch.org is
You
where
stop
this
stealing other
article's
people's
from.
stuff.
No, I'm citing my references here. I didn't just steal this sermon. But it's basically this is what they're saying. I'm not saying like I'm in agreement necessarily with all these things, but it's thought provoking, right? So there's this. I'll just read this little. How do we idolize the Bible? Well, by making it more than that, and yes, we can do that. We make reading the Bible essential for our salvation, required for keeping our salvation, and mandatory for being a member of the church, or anything along the lines of making reading the Bible equal to having faith in, believing in, or having a relationship with God himself, and we're idolizing the Bible. When we claim that today's modern translated Bible is word perfect and contains absolutely no mistakes in any form, we are idolizing the Bible. When we say that someone isn't really a Christian unless they read the Bible every day or at least very frequently, we're idolizing the Bible. We believe our Bibles contain some kind of physical supernatural power that keep us safe, keep loved ones safe, or prevent themselves from being destroyed in floods, fires, and explosions. We're idolizing the Bible. I mean, those are interesting. Again, I'm not saying one way or another, but this is an article that just kind of provokes some thought about that. I mean, it's God versus the Bible. If you were to say like, hey, would I rather have the Bible or would I rather have God or Jesus? It's like, I think the answer is obvious, right?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Was it that Greg Ford sermon from the other day where it's just like these things are designed, like there's a level of ambiguity within the scriptures because I think they're designed to be wrestled with. Like it's not meant to just be a rule book. Just, hey, you're going through some hard stuff. Here's your answer.
Right.
No, it's like, okay, now it's like we get the concepts, but like it's time to really begin to internally wrestle with, okay, this is what it says. Now it's time to really look in the mirror and take like inventory on what's actually happening. Not like what the scriptures say are supposed to happen, but it's like, first, let's take some inventory. Does that line up with what the Bible says? If it doesn't, what's good? what's going on. Because I have a feeling that the Bible's probably like, for the most part, when you talk about biblical principles, I believe that is absolutely how the universe works for the most part.
Right.
I have a
it's
question.
like, yeah.
It's a side note. It doesn't have anything to do with what you just said.
What's for lunch?
It's a good question.
Mac and cheese.
I'll ask that later.
Napperoni.
Whenever in court, do people really put their hand on the Bible before they take the stand? Is that's a
pretty sure.
that's a thing?
Still a thing, yeah.
Yeah, that's why
is
Neil
that a
Armstrong
thing?
wouldn't
I was recently on a
swear.
jury. Sure enough,
Do we know why
they make
that is
people
a thing?
totally drugged out. This dude was like had to come up and testify. Had no idea what he was doing.
Put his hand on the Bible, though, didn't he?
Sure did.
It's amazing. And you know
like,
what? You
that
try
feels nice.
you try to take that out of the courtroom, people will raise hell. But it's one of those things
It's like
where
when we stopped saying the Pledge of Allegiance in school. It's like,
Yeah.
but the kids don't even know what it frickin' means, dude.
Well,
like,
I mean, the other thing
it's not
too
a mountain
is
to die on.
well, yeah, and people think the Pledge of Allegiance is God, right? I mean, you know,
I
because it
wasn't
says
allowed
God
to
in
do the
there.
Pledge of Allegiance when I was in like elementary school because of the Jehovah's Witness thing.
Wow. Interesting.
So every day you just be like, and I'm gonna sit down.
I sat, yeah.
You know, and again, with
I'm not American.
none of these comments am I trying to reduce or diminish the
I ended up standing
sanctity.
after a while when I like realized.
great.
That's
but in my
funny.
head, I was just like, I'm not allowed to do this. Sorry.
Do this one without me, guys. Slightly less blessed. today.
Deuces, America. So no, and none of this am I trying to reduce or diminish the sanctity of the Word of God. Like, right? I mean, we're having these conversations here because I think they're interesting thoughts, and they're thoughts that people have, right? The last part of this before we stop here, idolizing human ideas and philosophies, which is real interesting, and I think it's kind of captured by the quote by C.S. Lewis here. There have been men before who got so interested in proving the existence of God, that they came to care for nothing for God himself, as if the good Lord had nothing to do but to exist. There have been some who were so preoccupied with spreading Christianity that they never gave a thought to Christ. Again, this is just, we're spreading a system. We're spreading habits. We're spreading rituals a lot of times. And it's just kind of sobering to read something like that, right? Like written by C.S. Lewis, who,
Right.
Narnia
Well,
guy.
I mean, summarizing a lot of what we talked about. I mean, I think the important thing to remember is like the scripture references talking about pastors and leaders a couple of times, talking about, when you know more, you'll be held accountable for more. And then in James talking specifically about like, hey, like maybe you shouldn't be.
Yeah. Think
Like,
hard about this.
Think hard about this, right? Because not everybody should be a teacher, right? So I think the important thing to just sit back and remember is like, look, God, at the end of the day, God's the judge, right? Like it's our responsibility, whether we're on staff with them, whether we're in their congregation, our responsibility, just like they're anybody else, is just to help them get to heaven, help them heal, whatever. It's not about diminishing someone or making them feel worse so that
Right.
we can temporarily feel better about ourselves.
And that's why I think the Acts 2 account of the church is just so beautiful, because it's like, it doesn't even mention pastors and leaders. It's just like, these people, like, dude, they believe so deeply in this thing. It's like, we're just doing it together. We don't need someone to convince us that this is what we're supposed to do.
And it's so funny. I'm sitting here thinking as you're saying that, what's ironic is it like makes me appreciate them more, because what's ironic is if they're a good pastor, they would be great in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
So they're sacrificing a lot.
So you just need some high quality dudes to fall on their swords and get into the vocation.
Yeah.
That's why still to this day, man, like when I talk to people about it, like I tried to pursue ministry for years and years, and where it ultimately landed was like, I cannot personally justify paying my mortgage. And that's just a personal place I got to, because I wrestled with a lot of these things and I thought about this stuff. And it's just like, God, like maybe this is unfair, but it's like, if you want me, like, and if this is your will for my life, because that's what, I mean, we dive into this thing. And that's a whole different concept of like, obsessing over the destination and fulfillment, where, I mean, just the focus on that brings you out of the present moment, and that's kind of tragic in itself. But my whole conviction was like, dude, if this is what I'm really meant to do, then like you're going to need to open up some doors so this can all be privately funded, because I will not ask people for their money and use it for me to have nice things. Yeah. I can't get over that. I won't. And it's like, if that's what it ultimately leads to, and I feel like I have it would only have to come from a very real journey wrestling through this stuff and a real revelation that that's what I'm supposed to do. Then I'm not doing it unless, or if we do it, like we don't, I mean, now in our current culture, like you need the building, you need these things, but it's like, you can't show me one scripture verse that says we need those things. I mean, we believe we need those things, and it'd be hard to do it without them. I get that.
Yeah.
But
yeah. So to wrap this thing up, I think, with nuance, I mean, I think we can all kind of agree that, the focus should be on God, not the guy who talks about him. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, we need to normalize firsthand revelation and stop idolizing secondhand revelation.
It's a good quote. I like that.
Less milk, more meat.
Okay.
Sorry, that was Christianese. Because sorry.
Oh,
quick context.
Less milk, more meat.
Yeah, because
I thought you said let's milk more meat. I'm sorry.
Sorry, less milk, more meat. There's a Bible verse.
We almost made it through a whole one.
Darn it. Yeah, there's a Bible verse quickly that just says like Paul's saying like, I wish I could like talk to you about deeper things, but you're still on the milk, in a sense of like you're still like a baby, where babies drink milk and then adults grow to like be able to eat meat. So the concept is, when you're a baby, you're eating essentially your mother's meal, where she's eating, digesting. Now you're eating, or you're eating the milk, right? So it's the concept of, it's time to start, teaching people how to feed themselves, right? Teach a man to fish, right? Don't just give them fish.
Yeah, get off the titty. Hey,
and that's a wrap.
May as well. All right. See y'all next time.